mission around the moon captured the world's attention. Add to that SpaceX IPO, and all eyes are on the moon and stars. There's talk of putting data centers for AI in orbit and of sending humans to Mars. But what will it take to make these ambitions a reality? Well, there's one woman who's working on just that. Ariel Ekblaw is a space architect who is working on the technology to make space dreams into reality. She is the founding CEO of the Aurelia Institute. She joins me now. Pleasure to have you on. You really are almost uniquely qualified to talk about this because you have a PhD in aerospace engineering, you were a physics major, you started this nonprofit and for-profit to do architecture in space. The question everyone has, I think, is what are we going to learn from going to space that's going to help us here? Or is this just an adventure?
This is a wonderful point to think about for the future of space infrastructure. Can we actually build really big scale structures in space for the public good? So what are people on Earth going to get out of it, even before we think about your lifestyle that you might have in space? One of the things that we're working on at Aurelia Institute is the idea of an orbital biolab. So a really large-scale structure, way bigger than you could fit in your biggest rocket, that does microgravity research. So this is basically looking at biology when it's floating in orbit, really profoundly different behavior than what you get on the ground. And there's amazing potential for cancer and Alzheimer's drug treatment discovery, new types of protein crystallization, and maybe even prosthetics like artificial retinas manufactured in space.
I've always thought that manufacturing of a certain kind could be more easily done in space.
Yes.
It's less environmentally bad. You know, have to be done obviously by robots and things like that.
Right.
How much of that is a pipe dream? How much of it could actually happen?
This is actually also one of my favorite, I think, promises for the space industry. When you're floating, you get much more pure crystals. And so there's manufacturing in the biology domain. There's also manufacturing for fiber optic cable. When you're floating, you don't have any gravity, or you're not experiencing gravity, so you could do an infinitely long extruded beam and start to build and manufacture really incredible structures in space that you cannot make on Earth. And so that's absolutely something that our ecosystem, kind of between Aurelia Institute, the nonprofit side, where we do the research, and Rendezvous Robotics, where we do the actual scaling up of the space infrastructure, this is definitely a domain that we're actively working on, is in-space manufacturing and construction kind of writ large.
So how much of this is, science fiction, and how much of it is, this is a reasonable prospect that 5 to 7 years from now, some of this stuff will actually be happening?
This is the really amazing inflection point that we have, partly thanks to the drop in launch costs, really dramatic drop in cost to get to space.
Because of SpaceX.
Right? With Starship, it's anticipated that the cost per kilogram might be around $200 a kilogram, compared to about $1,500 or $2,000 a kilogram today, and $50,000 a kilogram under the NASA shuttle program. It's a huge moment to capture a lot of activity. So 5 to 7 years, what are we looking at? We want our orbital biolab module that Aurelia Institute is building in partnership with a university consortium to basically protect open science in orbit. We think we're going to be ready to attach to one of those commercial space destinations in 2030, 2031, so 4 to 5 years. For AI data centers, one of the profound benefits, even though it has a lot of technical challenges, is you would get that carbon footprint off of the Earth from all the heat generation from the electronics. And then you also get the benefit of raw, unfiltered sunlight energy because you're above the atmosphere, right? So you're getting really good free energy. I think that those two factors and the idea that we now have Starship and New Glenn coming online, you're going to see a lot more investment of capital into this domain of building big space structures. And we're super excited to support that at Rendezvous Robotics as well.
So let me ask a skeptical question, which is, the thing about space, outside of satellites, which are really more about what they provide
to
for
Earth,
us at
GPS,
Earth, right?
weather, yeah, exactly.
But if you look at space travel, it has largely been, kind of the gee whiz, oh my gosh, we can do it.
Yes.
Rather than stuff that has actually benefited human beings that much. Is it something that we are going to see major, is this a new inflection point, or am I misinformed?
So what's really been the stymieing factor for the last 50 years is space, to your point, was the domain of military, defense, and government, exorbitantly expensive, we're about to be able to scale up things like artificial retinas in orbit for the benefit of life on Earth. Keytruda, drugs like cancer life-saving drugs from space, we can now do it at a much bigger scale for humanity because this drop in cost to actually access the space environment. The final example that is always in the back of my mind is the image that was taken of Earth on Apollo 8 in 1968 on Christmas Eve, Earthrise.
Yeah.
Stuart Brand put it on the cover of the Whole Earth catalog, and that helped to launch the environmental movement in the United States in the 70s. So there's both a pragmatic, we can get real science insights out of the International Space Station, out of the next wave of space stations. Now it's cheap enough to do that at scale, better than we have done. But there's also a philosophical benefit, I think, for humanity of expanding our concentric circles of awareness as a species and coming to really appreciate Earth as the best home we will ever have, even as we explore further out. And so I think the space program has already shown that they can really do that. They can really move hearts and minds about appreciating this beautiful blue marble planet that we are living on.
All right, on that note of optimism, Ariel, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor.